for their prime headquarters.
Okay.
And if we could locate that by locating the antenna first, their prime broadcast antenna, then once we located that, then we could go into the area and suss out where some of their main units were. And then once we had built the schematic of how they were laid out, we could call in,
Okay. So you guys were kind of triangulating on
on
enemy
the antennas.
enemy HQs,
Right.
And then
Predominantly
ordering a
the
strike.
HQs. Sometimes we got smaller units that were operating in the area that were doing a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
They would bring us in on that. I remember one, and we took a lot of photographs too sometimes when we saw things that were obviously enemy active things.
So this is almost maybe, along the lines of what NSA is doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, but way up front.
Yeah.
And when I first got there, we lived in the base camp. We lived in a hole in the ground. It was actually a hole dug in the ground for a GP medium, and there were 6 guys in the hole living together. And so we just had the tent top spread out with a trench dug around it, and we had ammo crates for floor. So when it got wet and mucky in the bottom, we could walk around on the ammo crates and it was dry. And we had a couple tent poles in the center. And so we were sleeping right up against the dugout wall. And we could sandbag our sleeping cots. It was really warm, comfortable, dry. We get a rat in every now and then, but we found us a dog, call him Big Red. Buck Sergeant Red. And we turned him into an alcoholic. He got to liking beer so much. The worst beer in the world. Blue Ribbon.
Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Blue Ribbon. In the steel cans that rusted. But we give him a beer for any rat that he brought us dead. He turned into such an alcoholic.
Will work for beer.
Every morning, we'd throw the tent flap back and he'd be like this. Paws crossed. Sound asleep by the entry. 2 dead rats laying in front of him. So, 2 Pabst Blue Ribbon beers for breakfast. Then he was happy.
That's awesome.
And you'd see him around the unit, sitting with his ears like this, staring at a rat hole. Not moving, like stone statue dog. That rat stick his nose out, he'd have him. No more beer.
I read that you were in a helo crash in Vietnam.
Yeah, you could call it a crash. It was more or less like blown out of the sky. I hitched a ride coming back to Pleiku. I didn't want to take a vehicle ride for some reason. It was just quicker. I want to get back to Pleiku City, so I hitched a ride on a helicopter, and I had my rucksack. I had all my equipment with me. And so I was riding in this helicopter. And in Vietnam, the heat was so bad that helicopters back then with the smaller engines just couldn't lift off. They had to take an aircraft takeoff. They had to move in ground effect like an airplane. Once they get above a certain height, it's like only 400 or 500 feet, they could operate like a helicopter because the air got heavier. And so landing was the same problem. So we were coming into Pleiku to land. So we were cruising along the outside edge of the runway to where the helicopter parking pad was. And they waved us off because they had a big cargo plane coming in. So we moved over to the trees and went to about 100 feet over the trees.
The video.
Not above the trees. It's like around 100, 120 feet total. But we were over the tops of the trees, and the air was cooler. So I was sitting on the side of the helicopter with my feet on the sked, and I'm pretty sure we got hit with an RPG right in the belly, because there was this white fireball. That's all I remembered. And I woke up on the ground.
Yeah.
And I had fallen through trees, I guess ricocheting off of limbs or something. But when I landed in a flat sitting position. So I was sitting on the ground like this with my rucksack still on. But my rifle was laying way out here somewhere. I think I was still carrying the rifle then, but. So I went to reach for it and passed out from the pain, because the impact had jammed my spine. It had multi-fractured my spine to some degree. And I was in a lot of pain. So I was eventually able, it was right at dusk when this happened. So I was able to roll over because I was hearing things in the bushes I didn't like. And all I had was I had a knife, and I found a really good fist-sized rock. So I crawled up into some bushes and just laid there, in the fetal position, hoping if somebody found me, I wouldn't have to get into it. And I was out there all night like that. And then the next day, they came in to recover the wreckage, I guess, for parts or something. And they found a number of us still alive.
So you weren't the only
I
survivor?
wasn't the only survivor. Just about everybody survived. There might have been one dead or somebody that died later. I don't know. I just know when I got to the MASH unit, I was one of the fewer damaged people. I just had a spine compression. That's what they call it. So they put me in traction. They actually put metal pins in my skull and hooked wire, sandbags, and so I was like taut over this cot for, oh God, they had me there for like 2 weeks in traction. And I started feeling pretty good. And then they had a bunch of people come in wounded, and they said, sorry, we're going to take you out of traction. We think you're going to be okay. They took me out of traction. I stood up and almost passed out because of the recompression of standing up. And they gave me a couple shots, and they handed me a big bottle of Percocets. I remember it was like this big around, about this tall. And they said, you're going to be all right. Take these. Go back to your unit and walk it off.
Trick or treat.
Trick or treat. So I went back to the unit, and that's what I did. I walked it off. It was a lot of pain, but it started easing the more Percocets I took.
Yeah.
The better it got, and we even had some speed that we could. Some speed that we would take sometimes.
Testing.
Which caused some problems, because then you couldn't get something to go to sleep with. So we all started drinking Jack Daniels and throwing the cap away, that kind of thing.
Chasing the dragon.
Which I really paid for when I got out of the Army. That's a much later story. But I just learned to deal with it.
A lot of guys in Vietnam saw some weird things in the jungle.
You didn't have to be in the jungle to see weird things.
Really?
My first week there, I saw probably one of the worst things I ever seen in my life. I was in a 3/4 ton sitting up front. We pulled up to an intersection of a main road, and the 3/4 was right behind a what do they call it, a Lalo truck, or I can't remember what they call them now.
Some type of an indigenous vehicle?
Yeah, it was like a motorcycle with seats in the back for up to 6 people.
Like a tuk-tuk or something?
Tuk-tuk, yeah.
Okay.
That's what they call them, tuk-tuk. And it was a woman and a small boy in the back, and the driver revving his engine. And it was a convoy of trucks going through. And the convoy were all low boys with tanks on them and APCs and, heavy equipment. And they're blowing through this intersection, one behind the other. And sometimes there was a break. But the convoy kept going. And this guy got a break. I guess he thought he could make it. And he gunned the engine and he popped the clutch and he got out in the middle and it stalled. Bang. The next convoy truck hit him hard, spun him around, and the back wheels of the trailer went over him. And then every truck behind that, bang, bang. Every single one of them hit that tuk-tuk and started pounding it down in size.
Be unstoppable with an MBA from Franklin University. Franklin makes it possible for you to balance earning an MBA with your busy life. Finish faster with Ohio's #1 online MBA. Learn more at franklin.edu.
To the point you cannot see the difference between the metal and the bodies. It was just like a big spongy mess in the middle of the road. No stops. Nobody, the convoy just kept rolling through there. And I've always thought, so they just didn't show up at home. Nobody could have known who they were.
Yeah.
But nobody stopped. Nobody gave a shit. They just,
Like it was nothing.
a bang. That was nothing. And I can't get that out of my head. That was my introduction to Southeast Asia. That and little kids, innocent kids. Since then, it's kind of interesting. I probably wouldn't do a thing for an adult in trouble. Okay. But kids and dogs, or cats, innocent animals, innocent children, are what hurts. That's what drives me crazy. So if I see a child being mistreated or something, it takes a lot of willpower to walk away without pounding somebody into the pavement.
Yeah.
I can't deal with that. But grown adults, I don't give a shit. Hey, you asked for it, you earned it.
Yeah.
You're that stupid, well,
Yeah.
that's life. I've always felt that way ever since my military career. And it's probably unfair. It's probably bad thinking. I don't know. It's just
Well, I mean, don't you think that maybe kind of mindset develops as you experience war and see the lengths that humans will go to
yeah.
get what they want, prove a point, egos get involved in
Oh yeah.
but even just the war, by traveling around the world, and I mean, you had I don't know what you were doing in the Bahamas, but the Bahamas, Vietnam, I mean, you
I've been all over the world.
Start to see humanity for what it is.
Yeah, I think so. But I got to tell you that the average human being walking on the street has no control over what the governments do. It's the politicians that start wars.
Yeah.
It's the military. You have to finish them, clean them up, end them, however you want to look at it. I had a dinner with probably five generals, and the rest were colonels, Russian generals and colonels. And of course, they're heavy into the vodka and whatnot. There's a reason for that, by the way. They drink 3 vodkas. Whoever got up and left the room were spies. KGB, FSB, internal security. If they have a 3rd drink, they can't testify in court. So they get up and leave when the 3rd drink's poured. And after they leave, there's one thing that get interesting, because they all agreed it's politicians that destroy a country from the inside out. It's never the people that are willing to die for the country. It's politicians. And they dislike politicians almost as much as I do.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I really do. I just like the idea that somebody can just arbitrarily start a war based on some stupid policies without sitting down and talking about it or talking it out. It's corrupt. Because the people they represent shouldn't be set up for that or subjected to that without to say so. And I understand government has to do certain things, government has to set certain policies, all that kind of crap. But it's usually for the good of the big companies, economy, money, power, and it degrades into more stuff.
You know, it took me a long time to come to that conclusion and realization, and
it's hard to get there.
Yeah.
It really is, because your idealism gets in the way. You want to believe it's better than that. You want to believe that people are smarter than that people are more aware of what the hell is going on. Most people aren't aware. They don't want to be aware. It's like inconvenient. Mm-hmm. It affects their decision making at work. It affects their decision making with regard to their family, their income. Everything goes to security. Secure first, then deal with those issues. But you never get to those issues.
yeah.
It's always too much else that goes on.
How do celebrities like Justin Bieber and The Rock generate hundreds of millions of dollars? It's actually not what you think. They make a special kind of money known as royalties.
My name is Christian Mickelson, and I help everyday people increase their income online. And I have to say, we're pretty darn good at it. My company is called Publishing.com, and we were just named the 19th fastest growing company in America right now. And there you can see us at number 19 on the...
You've heard me talk about my passion for ketone supplements and how they boost your workouts by helping your body use fatty acids for fuel. I take a shot of HVMN's ketone supplement before my morning workout and before I record my show. It's not an energy drink, but what it does do is it gives me the energy and the clarity that I need to get through my day. I don't drink coffee, so this is my go-to when I need that edge. Ketone IQ comes in convenient shots and are great for workouts or when you need to be in the zone. Some of the world's best athletes rely on this to improve their performance because it doesn't contain sugar or caffeine, but it gives them the same benefits. I wish I had this when I was on active duty. I have more endurance, I don't get the crash, and it helps curb my appetite when I'm doing a long day of interviews without a food break. Folks, HVMN is offering my audience 30% off your first subscription order of Ketone IQ at hvmn.com/Sean. Again, visit hvmn.com/Sean and subscribe upon checkout for 30% off. Find Ketone IQ in your local Sprouts or Earth Bar stores nationwide. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. There's a common misconception that relationships have to be easy to be right. Well, I don't think that's true. I think that the best relationships happen when both people actually put in the work to make it the best relationship. Therapy can be a place to work through challenges you face in life in all of your relationships, whether with friends, work, your significant other, yourself, or anyone. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it isn't...
The bugs weren't bad because I had lizards hanging off the ceiling that would run over and suck up the bugs flying in. Anyway, it was a nice place to sleep and live. And I had a cook and a maid and a gardener and a guard and I don't know what else. And it was like $70 a month. So I was sleeping there. You know, you come awake sometimes and you know there's somebody in the room with you, but your eyes are shut, and it's something wakes you up. It's probably some very tiny noise that doesn't fit or something. But I became consciously awake and aware something was in the room with me, and I was laying with my eyes shut. So I had this whole thing in my head. I'm going to roll to the right, taking the gun with me, and I'm going to bring it to my chest and rack around as I roll over the candle to put the light out. And whatever's standing in the room, if it's standing in the room, I'm going to hit it with a solid slug first. And that's what I did. And everything worked like clockwork. And it was this figure of a human standing at the foot of the pad on the other side of the trapdoor, which was still locked and pinned, by the way. Pigs had not made a sound, nothing. And so I hit this thing square in the chest. I mean, right here, with a solid slug, and it slammed it against the wall. And it dropped to one knee and then stood up again. And I went, in my head, I was thinking, shit, what kind of body armor is that? So I shot it again with a XXX, and it almost dropped to a knee and then stood back up again and then took off for the balcony. And I think I hit it a third time as it was going over the balcony. And I'm a pretty good shot. I went to the balcony and looked over, expecting to see a body laying there. It was up on its feet and heading for the jungle already. And all I could think of was, I want the armor. I couldn't think of what the hell was that. And then I talked to the village chief about it. He gave it a name. I can't remember what he called it, but he said it was like an assassin that people could.
Money makes the world go round. Crypto makes the world go forward.
Take a plate of food or something into this place, a special place in the jungle, put a name on top and lay the plate of food out there. And this thing would read the message and hunt that person down and assassinate them. And I thought, nice story. But I couldn't find any trails or anything, so I couldn't do anything about it. So that was in 1972.
Was there any remnants of anything inside
Nothing.
the hut?
Absolutely nothing.
Just shells.
Just empty shell casings. No holes in the wall. Nothing. So, you know, I could understand some flattened rounds or something from it, you know. XXX is just basically 10-30 round ball peens that had to do something.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And whatever this armor is, it was taking it in and holding it in some way. So it was probably soft, some kind of soft armor. I don't know. But
Wow.
I didn't know what to do with that. So that was 72. Flash forward to probably 10 years ago now at the Monroe Institute, where I teach remote viewing and whatnot. I met a guy there at one of my talks. He was attending a Gateway program, and he was a cryptozoologist from, he said he was doing work for the Smithsonian at the time. I don't know if that was the same time he was in Thailand or not, but he was a cryptozoologist. They hunt for animals that have never been seen before, or bugs or stuff like that no one's ever seen. And he was telling me about this little deer that walked out of the jungles in Vietnam at the end of the war. No one had ever seen one. It was the size of a dog, little bitty thing. and it had horns that came out of its snout and went up its face around the eyes and came over like two hooks. And that was their nose. They actually breathed through that while they were eating watercress, because the water would always be up to here. So they breathed through these horns while they ate watercress. That's what their favorite food, evidently. No one had ever seen one before. No one had ever eaten one or skinned it or anything. There was no evidence that it had ever been seen before by anybody. And they walked out of the jungle at the end of the war. And I was like, how does something do that?
Wow.
Go through the whole war of Vietnam and survive. You know, it's like with all the arc lights and the bombing and the shelling. And, wow. And he was telling me about that. He said, but that wasn't the most unusual thing that happened. I said, what was that? He said, well, we were way up in upcountry Thailand. I think he said it was like due west of Udorn. And he said we were under the protection of a paramilitary police force out of Thailand. And they would set up a camp, and they had these tents they were walled tents they would set up, and they had 2 cots in the tent. And so wherever they set up to do a scouring of the jungle for these animals and bugs and things, they would put up 3 rolls of concertina wire and searchlights and all that kind of stuff and provide protection, because there are a lot of bandits up there and whatnot. And he said, I was awakened one night by my partner in the bed next to me, in the cot next to me. And he said, when I looked over, there was this human figure on top of him, strangling him, and he was choking. So he said, I can't remember what caliber pistol he said he had, but he reached in his boot, pulled his pistol out, and shot this figure in the side twice. And it rolled off onto the floor and got up and ran out of the tent. And by then, all the lights came on, and all the guards fired some rounds in the air. And this thing shot across the area and went over the 3 rolls of concertina and vanished into the jungle. They couldn't say anything about it, but his friend had ripped out big chunks of hair in both hands, which they put together and put in an envelope and mailed it back to whatever lab they used. So the next morning, they found a blood trail. So they followed it. And he said it went for a few kilometers, and it popped into a village. And they went to the village headman and talked to him, and he said, no, nobody was shot in the village that he was aware of. But his medicine man was sick. So they said, can we talk to your medicine man? And they said, sure. So they went and talked to the medicine man. And the medicine man was really ill. He was laying in the bed. And he had 2 bullet holes in the side. But he was in his 80s.
He was in his 80s?
80s. Not a hair on his body. I don't know what to make of that. He doesn't know what to make of that. But then that's when I told him about my experience in 72. So, yeah, I mean, you got to wonder about that stuff. I can't attest to anything other than the fact I know I hit it 3 times, or twice anyway. And it didn't even slow it down. And he shot it twice in the side, and the medicine man had 2 bullet holes in him. So,
Monday.com is the ideal platform for any organization that is looking to make their work more efficient. For nearly 40 years, the Smyrna team has been assembling quality, award-winning cars, trucks, crossovers, and SUVs.
Monday.com is ingrained in our work life and our project tracking, and has become an essential operating system at Nissan. The extensive customization allows us to build whatever we need, and for a large organization, it saves a lot of confusion and a lot of time.
Monday.com allows us to connect all of the platforms we use through integrations. If we need to share a file with someone or a calendar with someone, we can do that with Monday.
We've tried quite a few different platforms, and I've seen them come and go. I believe Monday.com has to stay in power because they're transforming as we're growing and transforming, so we know that they're growing right along with us.
So that was in 1971.
72 for me. With him, it was like 10 years ago when he related this to me, and he just come back.
So this is 52 years ago.
Yeah.
52 years. You still have no answers?
No answers.
That's the kind of thing that will that would haunt me for the rest of my life.
I want to go back there and see if we can find it.
What do you think that may have been?
I don't know. I think it's a mixture of things. I think it's somebody who fulfilled the worst nightmares of people, dressed in a body armor suit that could take the rounds, maybe. When he was younger, could take the rounds better. Then when he's older, maybe put the suit on wrong or it didn't have good side protection. Because most body armor doesn't have good side protection.
Mm-mm.
It has good front, good back protection, but no lateral protection. So if you're gonna like President Reagan, when he was hit, was a ricochet off the door frame or something, caught him in the side. You know he's wearing body armor under his jacket or his coat. So I think it's a combination of that, maybe covering it with some kind of hair off another real animal or something, because the report he claims they got back was dog hair, no specific species. So if they couldn't isolate the species, then it could have been off a number of different animals, all mixed together, that kind of thing. So I think it's a local, who knows?
Yeah.
I just don't know. But I think it'd be interesting to go back there and find.
Would definitely be
find
interesting.
out.
But even an 82-year-old.
Yeah, couldn't have jumped 3
villager.
Well, if he was in really good shape and was taking drugs, maybe.
Yeah. Even today's body armor, to take a slug.
Oh, no.
No.
He'd have to be 19 years old, physically better fit than I was, and the armor had to be impeccably good. Just like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always, back in my memory, was always thinking, God, it'd be great to have a piece of that armor.
Yeah.
Just see how it's made or how it's constructed.
Wow.
I have a retired colonel friend who came up with an idea of using spider wire, which was the new fishing line, and a new weaving concept to make body armor lighter and more efficient. He worked on that his whole career as part-time and came up with some pretty good ideas in terms of the weaving methodology, because it would tighten up as it was hit, but the weave was very tight. It wouldn't come apart if some of the strands got broken. That sort of thing. He had some good ideas there. I don't know what happened to him, but he really had some good ideas. But anyway, that's digressing. I've always wanted to go back.
I would want to go back too.
Yeah.
Or maybe I wouldn't.
Find
I
out
don't
what
know.
the hell that was.
But
it scared the bejesus out of me when it happened. And I didn't feel particularly quick about wanting to run off in the jungle after that thing.
I'll bet.
I'd be shooting for the ankles, maybe. Or a headshot, one or the other.
Yeah.
Triple X for the head and solid slug for the ankles. I don't know.
Wow. That is...
I don't even know what I'd do.
That's something.
Yeah.
I would love to know. How many have you heard of other people besides you
No,
and the
that's
other
the only,
gentlemen?
the one guy and me. I never expected to hear it again from anybody. But when the guy told me he was a cryptozoologist and was in that area and then said, "Oh, this really weird thing happened," he told me about it. I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
there it is.
When was your first? When did you get poisoned? Was that in this time frame?
No, that was, let me think a minute. That was after Thailand. No, I'm sorry. It's before Thailand. It was towards the end of my first tour in Germany. Tour being 3 years. And I was working in, well, I can't talk about what I was working in, but I could meet my wife every now and then. So a friend of mine brought her to the restaurant where we met, which was in Brunau am See, which was across the Elbe River in Austria. Really nice restaurant. Brunau is the same city that Hitler was born in. Born over a butcher shop. Go figure, you know. So, but this was a great restaurant. So I asked him to stick around, have dinner with us, since he had brought her and had driven so far. We were probably 200 kilometers from where the unit was that I was assigned to. So we ordered dinner, and we had before dinner drinks. And all I did was take a couple sips of my drink and started feeling really bad. And I didn't want to I felt like I was going to start barfing any minute. And I didn't want to do that in a restaurant. So I headed for the front door. And when I got to the front door, I remember hitting it with my hand. It was a glass swinging door. The door swung open, and there was like a pop. It actually like a snap. Like you snap your fingers. And I was standing on a cobblestone street, and it was a warm rain, and it was falling. Yeah, but I didn't feel like I was getting wet. So I went like this and noticed the rain was going through my hands. And I said, "Oh, now that's strange." And when I looked up, I saw this body half in and half out of this door. But I wasn't making that connection right away. So I kind of drifted over, which should have been a giveaway, but I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to the body. And I saw it was me laying on the concrete at the entry. And then the guy that brought my wife to the restaurant came out and grabbed me and pulled me up into his lap. He dropped to the pavement, pulled me up in his lap, and felt for a pulse somewhere in my neck, I guess. And then he started yelling at me, "Breathe, sucker." And he smacked me in the chest. Because we didn't have CPR back then. Nobody was trained in any of that stuff. And every time he hit me in the chest, I'd be back in my body looking up at him in this incredibly intense pain. And I'd be saying to him, stop. I was trying to get the words out, and I couldn't get them out, and I'd be standing outside my body looking down again. And he'd hit me in the chest, and I'd be back in my body in this excruciating pain. And I'd go, "Please," and I'd be out of my body looking down again. And I guess my wish came true, because I stayed out then. I just watched. And he kept hitting me on the chest. Nothing was working. And then he disappeared, and my ex-wife was down on her knees, and she was crying. And then this Volkswagen pulled up.
We're anesthesiologists, surgeons, emergency medicine physicians, pain management specialists. We're the largest provider of doctors into first-year U.S. residencies. St. George's University School of Medicine. Are you in?
And I think that's what he had brought her to the dinner in. So he jerked me up off the ground. He's my generator mechanic, so he was really a big guy. And he just jerked me up off the ground, threw me over his shoulder, and threw me in the back seat of the Volkswagen. And I'm standing outside watching all this. And then they took off, and I was like, whoa. So I'm flying along beside the car, going, stop,
You're in a full
stop.
out-of-body experience.
Full blown out of body.
This is the first one you've had?
First one I ever had in my whole life. I'm yelling, stop, stop. And then the next thing I knew, I was kind of like in the back seat of the car, hovering, which you can't do with your whole body. But I had that sense. And I saw him blow through the, back then they had customs from Austria and Germany and Austria, that kind of thing. He blew right through the customs check. Hung a hard right. Now we're back in Germany. He drove for quite a while, back across through another customs into Austria, and then back through another customs into Germany. He had to go around the city or something. But where we wound up was over near a city called Passau. It's way down in the southern tip of Bavaria. And he went to it's called a clinic or something. It's not a full-blown hospital. It's like a clinic. And he pulled me out of the car, threw me over his shoulder, and went to the door, and the door was locked. And I was like, I'm thinking, watching this, isn't that just like a hospital to be locked up when you need it? But he started kicking the door with his foot really hard. And this doctor rolls up to the door in a wheelchair. And I'm thinking, no, this has got to be a dream. That's what I started thinking. But the doctor unlocked the door, and I found out later that's what they do. They lock the door after 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night. And brought him in. He laid me on a table in an emergency room with the big lights and all that stuff.
Are you still out of body at this point?
Yeah, I'm hovering in that room, watching them cutting my clothes off and sticking all kinds of things in my throat and up my nose and all stuff. So I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm feeling a lot of heat on the back of my neck. And I thought, this must be the emergency light, and I must be bumping up against it. That's what my thought was. I turned around and I was enveloped in a white light. The light was the brightest light I've ever been in, but the least disturbing. It was like total, complete comfort. It's like being in the hand of God. And this voice said, it's okay. And I was like, yeah, this is perfect. And it says, but you can't stay. I went, I'm looking for something to hold on to. You're not pulling me out of here. I'm actually looking for a handle or something I can hold on to. And I suddenly woke up. I sat up and I was totally naked under a sheet, and I had tubes and wires hooked all up to my body, and I looked around and there was this German patient laying in this bed next to me. And I looked at him and I said, hey, it's okay. God's a white light and you can't cease to exist. Out the door the patient went. In comes the doctor. So you're awake? Not anymore. Off I went again. I woke up the next day. It was daylight. And I was on a gurney and I had a mask on my face that was actually taped down. And I was strapped to this gurney, arms and all, up on the back of seats, and it was a stretch limo. They had actually put me in a stretch limo, and they had tinfoil taped over all the windows. And off we went, and I'm yelling, or trying to yell, through the mask, where are we going? What's going on? And I just fell back into the comfort of whatever was going on. It didn't awaken again until much later, and then it was dark again. And when I woke up that time, I was in a hospital bed in a room that had some great views of gardens and stuff outside. And what it was the end room at a rest home. They had leased the entire wing, which was empty, except for that end room, and I was in the end room. And there was a psychiatrist there. And he said, "You've had an interesting experience. I don't want you to talk now." I said, "Bullshit. I want to know where I am, what's going on, etc." And he said, "Well, I can't tell you that." And I said, "Well, who can? Get him in here. Let's talk about it." "No, you need to relax. You need to rest." And I just kept getting more and more hyper. So they pulled him out of there. And the next morning, I fell asleep again. The next morning when I woke up, there was a new psychiatrist in the room. And he was sitting there, and he looked over at me, and he smiled, and he said, "Welcome back." And I said, "Who are you?" And he told me, "Colonel so-and-so, I'm a staff psychiatrist." I think he said he was with the 66 MI, but I may be inserting that. I can't remember. But he said, "If you want to talk, I'm here to talk." And he just pretty much left me alone. And so I started asking him how long I'd been there and stuff. And he gave me straight up answers. And I got to liking him. And then he leaned over and he said, "What you want to do is you want to try to be normal here if you expect to leave." And sat back. And I thought about it a little while. I leaned over to him and I said, "What's normal?" "Tell me what's normal and I'll be as normal as you want me to be." Because this whole thing's a trip for me. Mm-hmm. I thought I'd been heavily drugged. And I probably had been up to that point. But they didn't know what happened to me, and I don't know what happened to me. All they assumed was there had been irreparable brain damage, because every time they asked me what happened, I kept saying, "I went and I was with God, who's a white light. You can't cease to exist. That's all I know. And it's the most comfortable place you could ever be." Okay, get a little more rest. They weren't buying that. They thought I was brain damaged. So I started saying, "Well, where's my wife?" "Don't worry about her. We'll get her in here eventually." What they had done, I was the detachment commander at the time of a border site, which I can't go into in any depth. And they had let everybody at my border site know, and that's probably, at that time, I think I had 13 people assigned, think that I was dead, that I had died as a result of what happened at the restaurant. So, turns out they even let my wife think I was dead too.
Holy shit.
Because they didn't know what had happened. And that's when the thinking came out, well, maybe this was an attempted assassination or something. And I kept saying, no, it's something in what I drank. I kept saying, maybe I'm allergic to something in my drink. Well, the closest they came was they said it was probably a binary poison. And I said, what the hell is a binary poison? And the guy told me that the person I was talking to about it wasn't a psychiatrist. I think he was a medical doctor. He said it's basically two enzymes. You get an A enzyme with your breakfast. It's in the scrambled eggs. So everybody that has scrambled eggs that morning with you gets enzyme A. Enzyme B comes later that day. Enzyme A is stored in your liver. Enzyme B you get in your before dinner drink, as does everyone else that orders that drink. So that it's not, you don't target somebody specifically, but in reality you do. Only the targeted individual gets both enzymes. When they combine in the liver, they create a third enzyme, which creates a stroke, a massive heart attack, something that mimics a natural death. And that this poison was developed by the USSR, stolen by us, polished by us, would be a way of putting it.
Perfected.
Stolen back by the USSR. So nobody knows who did what to whom. And that's what they were trying to sort out. Plus they were trying to sort out whether or not I had brain damage. And so over the course of about a week, they decided that there wasn't significant brain damage, that I had actually had that experience, and that I had actually been out of body. All those things had actually happened. And that was due to the psychiatrist I had, who had evidently dealt with other people who had significant out-of-body effects from near-death experiences. And he convinced them of that. So I was reassigned to the 66 MI in Munich. That's when my wife was brought in.
Now you had later been trained on how to control an out-of-body experience. Am I correct?
Yes, I was trained by Robert Monroe, who actually wrote the book on out-of-body, Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. He actually brought it to the public forefront. I'm sure many people had that experience and never talked about it until he wrote his book. And so department, when I was judged to be an excellent remote viewer, they knew that I had been having spontaneous out-of-bodies ever since that event.
So hold on. How would that get triggered?
Oh, there is no trigger. That's the problem.
So it would just happen.
It would just happen.
Does it still happen?
Yeah, I still have spontaneous out-of-bodies every now and then. There's a way to initiate them, which I haven't done since the project terminated. Actually, since I did a couple targets for Department of Defense, DOD. What they did is they actually came out and hired Bob Monroe to teach me how to initiate, control my out-of-bodies. They wanted to see if intelligence could be collected that way that would be even better than remote viewing, more defined. So what I did for many, many months is I would leave Fort Meade after my remote viewing on a Thursday night, drive to Virginia to the Nellies Ford area of Virginia, where the Monroe Institute's located. And I would get up early on Friday morning, and then Friday, all day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I would work with Bob Monroe in his lab. I'd start very early in the morning, and we work all day, just doing exercises where he was teaching me how to initiate an out-of-body and control it. Hard work, really difficult. Not so much initiating them, but controlling them is a bitch.
How do you initiate that?
You lay in a certain position and you try to generate a repetitive vibration that starts at your feet, and it like runs up your body to the top of your head and back down to your feet. Most people, when they get this, get uncomfortable and they move around and it stops. If you generate it and it runs up to the head and down to the feet, you can keep it going. You can energize it. You can put more energy behind it to the point that you eventually separate from your body, roll out of your body so that you're looking down at your body, or you pass through a wall and you're outside floating, like in some suspended state of disbelief, because it's as real as you and I are sitting here talking when you're out of body and completely out of body. If you're not generating a fear of it, or you're not falling victim to being afraid of what might happen, that sort of thing.
So you need to be in full confidence.
Yes. Initially, you have like I had a sense every time I separated from my body that there was something evil in the room, something base, evil, that you couldn't deal with in the room with me. And I'd ask Bob about it. He'd say, I'd be inside this black cube, shielded box laying on the bed. He'd be in a different room monitoring me, and he'd say, it's okay, just go with it. And I'd say, but what is that? And he'd say, you'll figure it out. That's all he would ever say, you'll figure it out. Ugly thing in the room with me. I roll over to confront it, and it was my physical body underneath me. So your perceptions of baseness and ugliness and everything about this evil is your physical presence, which is kind of interesting.
Very interesting.
It's when you're out of body, it's a higher form of sensing, a higher form of being. The problem with it is the next thing you have to control is how to go somewhere and do something. You can go out of body and the first thing that catches your attention is a chandelier in the next room. But the chandelier, when you pass into it, is the most glorious thing you've ever seen in your whole life, because you're collecting everything about it into your sense of it. And so it's like you just want to grovel in it. Everything is better than what you are. I mean, you just want to capture all of it. Things of beauty are 10 times more beautiful, and things that you would normally not pay any attention to are the most gorgeous things on the planet. It's hard to not be distracted in the out-of-body condition. So I did that, and then Monday morning at 4 a.m. I get up and drive back to Fort Meade.
Can you feel energy flow?
You can feel everything in the out-of-body condition. For instance, once you get control of it, then Bob would start giving me things to do. He'd say, go to the location in the envelope. And I'd go to the whatever that location was. And I'd be in the out-of-body state. And I'd report to him what I was finding. On this one occasion, he sent me to the Basilica in Rome. It was in the envelope. The altar in the center of the Basilica of Rome. So I landed there in the out-of-body condition, and there was a beam of white light that came through the center of the dome and just splattered on the floor. It filled the whole room with light. And I told him, this is a place of light. It's a column of just what looks like liquid energy light coming through the center of a dome. And he said, put your hand in it. Put my hand in it. I went, oh, wow. And he said, what are you feeling? And I said, perfection. What do you mean? I don't know. Don't want to move. Just want to be here. It felt like unconditional love, perfection. And then I said, housed in a box of broken glass, or something like that. It's okay, fine. Pull your hand out. Why? Yeah, because I said so. I'll come in there and jerk you out of that bed. No, he didn't say that. But he'd say it's time to leave or something, and I would do that. But we did that for quite a while, and then people showed up while I was in the box, and I was taking a nap because we had been working for quite a while. And this is months later. They showed up to test me. And so I got 2 targets, which I was tested on. And I did the 2 targets, wrote it all out afterwards, and gave it to the representatives from the DOD. And after which they said, don't do this anymore.
What is your reaction to that?
My reaction to that is, oh, you don't like the result. So now I'm not supposed to do it anymore. If it had been the result you wanted, then I would be doing it some more. That's how I felt in my head and everything. The one target, the second target that I did.
Let me, if you don't mind, can I rewind?
Sure.
So you were poisoned in an assassination attempt. You had an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
Then they wanted to study you in the wing of some psych ward or hospital or something under medical supervision.
I don't think it was study. I think they were trying to determine whether I had irreversible brain damage or whether or not I was still sane and straight.
From there, you went to be trained on by Bob Monroe on out-of-body experiences.
No. From there, I finished a complete another tour.
Okay.
In Germany, northern Thailand, did some things in other countries, and then came back to the States, made warrant, was in charge of my MOS, and then recruited by the psychic program, developed my psychic abilities to the point that some have said it's the best in the world. And that's when they decided, well, maybe it would be even better if you could go out of body to a target.
Okay.
And collect data.
Let's stay in chronological order, if that's okay, I would like to revisit this. Why do you think that so many people who have out of body experiences? I've had several on the show
Yeah.
who have had out of body experience in combat, from being shot in the head or
Yeah,
leg blown off.
I
or-
can
or-
understand it.
Why do you think that? Why is it a near death experience that seems to always trigger the initial out of body experience?
I think it's as close to death as you can ever come and still be here. That's what I think. Now, can it be generated? Yeah, you could generate it, but only within limited circumstances in terms of targeting something. The second target I did is a good example. They gave me a picture of a building, and they said, "We're not going to tell you where this building is. Your charge here, the mission, A, find the building. Once you found it, countries, nobody cares. Find this building. Once you find the building, go to the, I can't remember, it was second or third floor, pass through the wall, go down the hallway, find the bank vault door, pass through the vault door into we'll call it a lab. Go to the northwest corner and there's a table, and on the table is an object. Push your face into the object, collect as much data as you can, wake yourself up and draw it to detail in scale on a piece of paper. That was my mission. It took me 2.5 weeks of out of bodies just to find the building. And when I found the building, it took 3 or 4 out of bodies to get to the vault room. But I was finally able to pass through the vault door, which is an experience in itself. Passing through a vault door, you can actually feel it. It's like peeling your way through an onion with your molecular shape. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like you can feel every molecule as you pass through it. I don't think it's so much the material as it's the denial of access that does that to you. I can't explain it. But you get inside the room and you go to the northwest corner. I'm not sure I was at the northwest corner. I just went to wherever the table was. And there was an object about this size on the table, and I pushed my face into it, and I memorized it in detail. Tried to understand how the parts interworked with each other, that kind of thing. And then woke myself up, and I went in. I had a drafting table in my home, and I drew a detailed picture of it. And I rolled it up, put it in a tube, and mailed it to the people that had tasked me. They came out some weeks later, 2 guys, and they said, "We have some questions we want to ask you." And I said, "Fine." They said, "Where did you take high energy physics?" And I said, "I have never taken high energy physics anywhere." "Okay, who do you know that's a high energy physicist?" And I said, "I know one guy, Ed May. He's my good buddy from the lab, LFR, Laboratories for Fundamental Research. I've known him in the remote viewing area since I started." I said, "I know him. He's a low energy physicist. I don't know any high energy physicists." "Okay. Where do you check your books out? What libraries?" And I was like, "Oh, come on." I'm starting to think, you don't believe what I did. You think I just psychically figured out what it was, and I've asked people in detail about it. No, we just really want to know where you sign your books out. So I gave him permission letters to go to the 2 libraries I used and ask, what books did he sign out? That sort of thing. I think they were very badly misled when they saw what books I signed out. So I got the idea that they didn't believe what happened, and it pissed me off. So I said I could build something better than what I saw.
What did you see?
I'm not sure. Some kind of a trigger or something.
For
a device of some kind. I don't know. But I knew I could build one better just by going into light fiber. This is a copper wire thing. I said I could speed it up 100,000 times with light fiber. In fact, I could make it so fast it would get warm when it runs, or hot even, and melt down. So I'd have to put it in an acrylic cube and run coolant through it. So I did all that, and I drew it in detail, but it was down to about twice the size of a pack of cigarettes. And I drew it to scale in detail with lots of notes and stuff. The big thing was there was a trigger in it. I don't know if there are certain things that if you put too much power to them, it'll kill a city. You know, it'll shut all the power down. It's like the big lights over a football field. If you just snap a switch and turn them all on at one time, the city goes dead, goes dark. So they have these switches that are slow build switches. They come on very slowly, and the lights come on very dim, and they start brightening, and eventually they come up to operating speed. That way the light doesn't explode when it's suddenly lit and all the power is going to the lights and that sort of thing. Well, I needed one of those switches, and I couldn't find one. I went to 3 or 4 different electronic places. So I finally found a switch that would work, and I drew that into the plan. And I roll it up, put it in a tube, and mail it. They showed up the next day. Non-disclosure agreements, never promised never to draw this again ever. Don't show this to anybody. Don't talk about it in detail with anybody. Blah, blah, blah. So I signed all their papers and said bye. I've never been tasked with another out-of-body target.
Can I ask why you signed those papers?
Because I didn't give a shit.
Did it bother you that somebody was having you sign documents basically saying we're going to limit your mental capacity?
No, because I can still go out of body anytime I want. I can still do things out of body. I just don't tell people about it.
Where was the building?
I don't know. I honestly don't.
How did you find it?
I don't know the answer to that either. I just kept looking everywhere I went out of body. I just kept looking.
How did you begin the search?
The search? Well, I started in this country, and I went to Canada, and then I went to Mexico, and then I spread out from there. I just started looking for something identifiable. And I think there's an inherent way that out-of-body works. It gets you to what you're looking for if you can maintain the focus long enough.
When you begin the search and you're out of body, is it like a bird's eye view? Or are you street level?
I think it's in the out-of-body condition, it's like you can observe a lot of things simultaneously. You're not limited to what we're limited to in the body.
Is it intuition?
Yeah. For lack of a better word, it's more than that, but that comes close to it.
you're experiencing multiple locations at the same,
Same time, right.
and you're able to process.
Oh yeah, just in remote viewing, I'm able to process vast amounts of data. Because everything I get from a remote viewing standpoint, I don't necessarily retain. I get it, I start stacking it in different columns. One thing relates to another. I move columns around. Then I collapse it back down to something that's definable. And then I start deciding what I will use and what I won't use. I throw things out, I add things in. By the time I sketch something on a piece of paper, it's usually some time invested in the remote viewing. I just don't put everything down like I used to. When I first started in remote viewing, you have a tendency to write everything down. It's too slow. That's not how the brain works. The brain works rapidly, very fast. And it's an intuitive action because you're not wasting your time on things that don't apply. You're only going with what applies. And in remote viewing, you come to a basic understanding for what it is you're looking for. And then you try to define it in the way it's being used. So I should have brought some really good examples of my remote viewing with me, where most people write a few words and do some sketchy stuff. I'll draw it in detail. An example would be, if you want to hear an example.
Absolutely. I would like to hear an example.
Okay. There was an agency came to us and said, can you track a spy? And we said, piece of cake. That's what I said. Piece of cake. My buddy, Dr. May, said, yeah, I think we could do it. And I said, what's in it for us?